Welcome to the Dan Casper Show podcast, your chance to catch the full show anytime, anywhere. If you missed it live on the radio, no worries. We've got you covered with all the sports talk, opinions, interviews, and conversations from the show. From the Packers to the Brewers to the biggest stories in sports and around Wisconsin, it's all right here. This is the Dan Casper Show podcast. All right, second quarter, kick it off right now. First quarter flying on by. Lots of you joining in on the conversation. We appreciate that. Hit us up on the Section 105 chat room or that Shoe Doctors bullpen line at 715-830-1912. First hour we spent talking Brewers with the collapse from last night, potentially looking for a new closer, Abner Uribe. Pat Murphy acknowledging that Trevor McGill not pitching like a closer right now, so it looks like there's going to be a change in that. Another topic we talked about in that first hour, Pat Murphy calling out Brewers fans for booing Trevor McGill. So, are you a booer? Do you agree with Pat Murphy? Do you not agree with Pat Murphy? When's it appropriate to boo? Is it only opposing teams? Do you boo your players on your favorite team or your team as a whole? We've had opinions from both sides. Hit us up because, reminder, for today's giveaway for our card that was donated by one of our listeners, Paul, from the Section 105 chat on YouTube, since we're talking about closers, well, maybe the Brewers could use a guy like Dennis Eckersley. So Paul had donated a autographed Dennis Eckersley card, a 2022 Topps Gilded Collection. It's got a gold frame across it. The auto is graded 10, cards graded 9. Case in there. That's a thick case on there, too. So, giving it away today based off participation points. I know when we were in school, we hated participation points, especially me. But now I get to be in that role of deciding grades on participation points. So, how do you participate? The more you text in, the more you message us, the more you reach out to us for this morning's program to give us your opinion, your thoughts, you get a point. You get a little checkpoint. So, I had a college class that was, a lot of that grade was based off participation. Man, I hated it. I was always afraid of giving the wrong answer. That's where I was at. So, but, all right. There you go. See that beautiful gold card here? Hey, coming up in a couple hours, 9:35. This should be a fun interview. We're going to be talking with the founders of Eastbay. Remember Eastbay, the catalog? A lot of people my age. Yeah, we loved getting that thing in the mail. They dropped their own book yesterday, the Book of Eastbay. So we're going to be talking with Art and Rick at 9:35. But since perfect because Wednesday, a little inside the hobby, I got to know, does anybody collect Jordan shoes? Anybody collect shoes or have any shoes in their man cave collection? I feel like that's like one thing I don't have. I need to get like a pair of shoes or a shoe that's autographed by somebody. I know a couple people who are big into Jordans and collect Jordans and such. So I should reach out to them and see how many pairs that they have. If you're listening right now, you know who you are. Tell me how many pairs you have, because I've been to your man caves where I've seen your collections, and I've seen it. So I got to know how many pairs you have. But this should be fun, talking with a couple of Wausau natives. I still remember getting that catalog and just sitting down. We would take it to school and look at it and study hall and such. Man. All right, so that should be fun. It is a Mike Star Market Am I Wrong Wednesday, so give me your Am I Wrong statements. Best ones I'll read up on the air. Also, Hy-Vee Game Changers. All right, Hy-Vee Game Changers. Give us your picks. Who's the game changer or what was a game changer from the past week or so? All right, let's kick off this hour as we are just a little over a week away from the draft. A week from tomorrow, the first round will kick off in the NFL draft. Right now, Packers don't have a first-round pick unless they decide to trade up, which I don't think they're going to, but never say never. So, obviously, day 2 right now, pick number 52 is their first one. But I want to focus on offensive line today for our draft countdown potential prospects. And offensive line is always kind of an interesting thing when it comes to Green Bay. We know that they really like offensive linemen that can play multiple positions, the versatility, right? They love those type of guys. Not every offensive lineman that they have on their starting unit or such is one of those, but they really like the versatility from their offensive linemen. And you look at the history of Green Bay, and you look at, some of the players that they've picked. They've had success finding those guys in the 4th round, 5th round, Bakhtiari, Zach Tom, Corey Linsley. They've also had success with first-round picks, Brian Bulaga. Derek Sherrod, was a first-round pick. I just wonder how much that gruesome leg injury really derailed his career and such. Mark Tauscher was a 7th-round pick, I believe. I mean, they've had success. So, and they're not afraid to draft offensive linemen with their first-round picks and kind of sit them right away. Bulaga wasn't a starter right away. Tauscher got hurt, and then 2010, Bulaga steps in halfway through the season, and bada bing, bada boom, ends up being a fantastic right tackle for many, many, many years. Jordan Morgan, first-round pick, was not a starter right away. Will be this year. We'll see how it all kind of pans out. Green Bay's had success with second-round offensive linemen. Elton Jenkins was really good. Jason Spriggs was not. There's examples of each. So the question I kind of have is, when it comes to offensive line in Green Bay particular, do you kind of fall back on their history, fall back on their pedigree? Like, you know what? They've had some really, really good linemen that they found day 3. So that's why they shouldn't have to draft, or that's why they shouldn't draft an offensive lineman early, because they could find that guy on day 3, rounds 4 or 5. Or are you of the mindset, hey, if that's the best guy available, you can never have too many good offensive linemen. We need depth. We need big-time depth. So if it's the 2nd-round pick, if it's the 3rd-round pick, let's do it. It may not generate a lot of hype or interest or excitement. It may not be the sexiest pick. But gosh darn it, we need offensive linemen. You look at the depth chart. There's no question Green Bay needs some talent. In my opinion, they need to come away in this draft with at least a couple of offensive linemen. I mean, your starters right now are Jordan Morgan, Aaron Banks, Sean Ryan, Anthony Belton, Zach Tom. And even look at last year. Anthony Belton was a 2nd-round pick. Wasn't a starter right away. After that, you got the veteran Darian Kennard coming back. Then it's Jacob Monk. It's Travis Glover. It's Brant Banks. It's John Williams. It's Dalton Cooper. It's Donovan Jennings. They need some more guys. So I think we all kind of figured Green Bay's probably going to get a couple offensive linemen in this draft. It's just the question of when, how soon. And if we look at the top 30 visits, there's not a ton. There's not a ton of players on there. So let's just kind of take a look at some of the options that may be there. I think a lot of people's favorite player. Now, if you don't know this person, look him up. But it's Mr. Dunker from Iowa. Okay? He's a big Culver's guy. He's a big outdoorsman. The hair, the mustache, the mullet. I mean, you look at him and like, that's a Wisconsin guy. So I feel like if he was the pick by Wisconsin, or excuse me, if he was the pick by the Packers, the state of Wisconsin would instantly fall in love with him. He's a potential option. I've seen him mocked in round 2. I've seen him mocked in round 3. Probably going to be a guard. And you look at the guard situation with Green Bay. You know, how much do we trust, like Aaron Banks? You know, maybe you need the replacement of him, or can you trust him to stay healthy and such? But I mean, if Dunker is drafted by the Packers, you already got the Culver's connection there, man. And then, as much as he loves going out in the outdoor, there's some great stories if you didn't kind of follow along at the combine and such, do yourself a favor and Google it. You're probably going to love this guy. And if he is a Packer, you might as well start printing some of the jerseys right away if you're the pro shop. Because the more that story comes out on him, the more Wisconsin fans, Packers fans are going to love that guy. So he's a potential option out there. Now, do you want maybe a guy that's going to be more versatile? Do you want some tackles, potentially? Guys that can play multiple positions because, let's face it, that's what Green Bay wants, right? They want guys that have position versatility. We could debate about whether it's the right way to go about it, but maybe one of those guys is a day 3 pick, Brian Parker from Duke. He's started games at both tackle spots, left tackle, right tackle. But there's the thought that he could move to center at the next level or even guard. So you talk about that position versatility that somebody maybe you could get early day 3 and you could plug him in a couple different spots on the line with his experience of playing at both tackle positions, but maybe he's better suited to play inside at the NFL level. That screams of a potential Packer fit. That's like, oh man, that guy is like perfect for Green Bay. You know, maybe some other guys that are potentially those day 2, day 3 picks for Green Bay. You're looking at a guy potentially like an Austin Barber from Florida. He's another guy that has experience playing both tackle spots. And you look at it, he's at Florida. Well, you played against the SEC. Playing up against those defensive players, that talent. And I look at Green Bay, and I look at this depth. I wouldn't mind getting a swing tackle. Somebody who could play the left tackle or the right tackle spot in case something were to happen. And Austin Barber out of Florida seems to be a guy that could fit that right away. Could come in and be your swing tackle. And the fact that he has gone against some SEC talent on the defensive side, I think kind of bolsters that case a little bit. You know, you'd like to think he's not going to be intimidated by, NFL talent and such by going up against the SEC. He's still a rookie. So let's give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. But that's another option. You've got, there's other tackles out there too that could be kind of a swing tackle, maybe with some guard talk. It's Cage Casey. He's from Boise State. He's been talked about as a potential swing tackle, maybe better suited to go into guard. Because when it comes to offensive linemen, you're going to talk about length, arm length. When it comes to Brian Bulaga, remember Brian Bulaga was always kind of criticized or critiqued. He's got short arms. Every time I hear offensive linemen with short arms, I think about what's that movie with the T-Rex, the cartoon movie? It's like, I got a big head and little arms or something like that. But, Brian Bulaga panned out pretty good. But maybe Casey for Boise State's one of those guys, too, that, swing tackle, but in a pinch, he could get you some reps on the inside at that guard position. Same with a guy like Trey Zune III from Texas A&M. Spent the most of his time playing left tackle, but he did start a couple games at center. And there are some NFL scouts out there that feel like he could best transition into the interior, into a guard at the NFL level. Now, a lot of these players that I'm mentioning are probably day 3, maybe late day 2 picks. Could they go maybe a little bit higher? maybe for their first pick, 52 overall, day 2. That may be where, if they want a guy like Dunker, maybe that's where they go. If they want one of the better tackles, if they want one of the better tackles that's going to be available in this draft, well, they may have to use that 52nd overall pick. I think they're comfortable with Zach Tom, but is there maybe still some question marks about Jordan Morgan? Do they want to protect themselves? To me, it's going to be interesting to see what Green Bay does on this offensive line standpoint. How early do they address it, or do they rest on their laurels and kind of say, we have a history of identifying some really good offensive linemen in the later rounds? That's what we're going to count on again. It's just the other part in this, too, is how much confidence do you put in Luke Butkus, Adam Stenovich, to help develop these guys? That factors into this as well. There's no question in my mind, though, that they have got to at least get a couple of offensive linemen in next week's draft to bolster this depth. So I would not be surprised if, let's say, they use a round 3 pick or early round 4 and double dip again in the 5th to bolster that depth. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll talk some more football. Keep your comments coming. Give me your Mike's Star Markets, Am I Wrongs, your Hy-Vee Game Changers, all that fun stuff. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with plenty more coming up after these quick words. Road trip season is right around the corner. Are you and your vehicle ready to go the distance? Well, before you hit the highway, make sure that your vehicle is in top shape with the help from AJM Automotive. From oil changes and tire checks to brakes and engine work, their experienced team will make sure that you are ready for wherever the road takes you. And now with 2 convenient locations in Eau Claire, getting your vehicle serviced has never been easier. Plan the trip and AJM Automotive will handle the rest. Just visit ajmautomotiveservices.com to schedule your appointment today. And maybe one of those road trips is going to be checking out some Blue Gold Softball. When we talk about AJM Automotive, we gotta give a shout out to Blue Gold Softball, because Blue Gold Softball is going to be hitting the road for a doubleheader taking on UW River Falls. First game is going to be at 2 p.m., second one at 4 p.m. Baseball for the Blue Golds are also going to be on the road today, as they're going to be taking on Stout at noon and for another doubleheader. And then second game is going to be at 3 p.m. All right, continuing some football chat here as we get set for the draft next week. First round a week from tomorrow. Second round and third round a week from Friday, and that's when Green Bay will officially be on the clock. And a topic at hand this morning is we're talking about offensive linemen. How early should they address that position, or do they kind of rest on their history that they've been able to find guys in that 4th and 5th round and ended up being pretty good? Joe, how early? I know a lot of it is going to depend on how the board falls and such, but how would you have it? I guess maybe the best way to ask this, would you have an issue if Green Bay used their first pick, 52 overall, in getting an offensive lineman when it's a good possibility they would not be a starter at the beginning of the year?
100%. Absolutely 100%. I have zero issue with the Packers taking an offensive lineman at 52. I'd have zero issue at 84, zero issue at 120, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, again, last year, look, I think a lot of the offensive struggles of the Green Bay Packers were because of the offensive line. And you and I have talked a lot about Luke Butkus and Adam Stenovich and, are they coaching these guys up? And is this a line that has the potential to be better? And you look at the yards after contact or the unblocked yards by Josh Jacobs, and it's off the charts. So 100%. And also the sacks. Too many sacks last year. Too much pressure on Jordan Love. So I'd have zero issue with it. And this is a good draft for offensive linemen. So if they don't do it, I still see value in some of those picks around 3, 4, and now with an additional 5. But if they do it in that round 2 at pick 52, I have zero issue with it.
Question that came up a lot during the year, or during the season last year was, should they focus, and it was mostly specifically about Jordan Morgan and such, but should the Packers maybe change their approach on how they view offensive linemen, the versatility of playing different positions such? Should they focus maybe more on finding the guys that best fit in certain positions? Do you think they should still go with their approach of finding offensive linemen that can play multiple positions on that line, or should they hyper-focus on players that are just, that's a left tackle, and we're going to keep them at left tackle?
It's a great question. I think the way to look at it is this. I think you still focus on versatility, but then I think you coach more specificity. And so I think you still bring these versatile guys in, but I think the Packers have to recognize early on, where do we want to put this guy? Where is the best position for this player? So I still think the versatility will play well for them down the road, but I think you have to coach them differently, and I think you have to realize early on. And I think that's where the Packers have failed. Maybe not necessarily drafting the versatility, but then going too far with that and not really recognizing what you have. So I don't think it's a drafting issue with the offensive lineman. I think it's a coaching issue, and I think, again, going back to Jordan Morgan, everyone said coming out, every scouting report, all the film said that this guy's a left tackle, and then you moved him around a lot. I get it. The philosophy of your 5 best out there, and I understand that 100%. But I think early on for a young guy, if he can focus on one, maybe a second position, and when I say second position, maybe it's flipping to the other side, so left guard to right guard, or left tackle to right tackle. But I think playing him all over the line, that's a tough one. And look, I played offensive line in high school, and I started at right guard. And whenever there was an injury, I moved to any of the other positions. So my senior year, I ended up playing 4 of the 5 offensive line positions. And again, it's tough. It's not easy. And I'm talking about high school level, obviously, nowhere even near pro level. But that's a tough transition. Your drop step is different. Your hand placement is different. There's a lot of nuances that you don't realize that go into that. And so, again, no problem, though, drafting for versatility. But I think this coaching staff has to realize early on where a player fits best.
We spent a lot of time yesterday, obviously, talking receivers with the Dontavian Wicks trade and such. With Wicks now being traded, and you're looking at the roster here, as of right now, Watson does not have an extension. Jaden Reed does not have an extension. Does it change, in your opinion, how Green Bay approaches the draft in addressing the wide receiver position now that Dontavian Wicks is not on this roster?
You know what? I've seen it both ways, and it's interesting. We've all seen that meme on social media with the guy standing up. It's an old-timey picture of the guy standing up, and he kind of is the only person standing up. And I saw one the other day that said, I believe the Packers don't need to draft a wide receiver in this year's draft, and I would agree with that. I just don't think there's the need now. If the best player available on the Green Bay Packers board happens to be a wide receiver, then I'd say go for it, absolutely. But I don't see it. I just don't see the need being there that you have to go out and get someone. And again, if they do draft someone, look, if they get a Bryce Lance type of guy in that 4th or 5th round, who I think has a huge upside, will I be excited about how he could be used in this Green Bay Packer offense? Of course. But I don't think this changes it. And I look at it and I say to myself, they're in a good place. And I get it. Jaden Reed doesn't have the extension. Christian Watson doesn't have the extension. You've got 2 young guys. And I thought it was real interesting, Dan, just as a side note, the Packers tour is on the go right now. They are touring the state, and 2 players on that tour are Randall Cobb and James Jones. When they interviewed Randall Cobb and talked about, Matthew Golden's lack of touches last year, and Cobb said, look, that was me, that was Jordy, that was Tay. That is the Packer way, and that is this offense. And again, whether it be the offense from Mike McCarthy or what the offense is today, there is a lot of stress put on that wide receiver position. So, yeah, I see big things for Golden. I think Savion Williams has a bigger upside than what we saw him last year, and I don't think LaFleur really knew how to use him. But getting back to the draft, I just don't see it. I don't see this, the Packers got to go out and get someone. I would actually feel better when you look at the youth of this receiving core. I would actually feel better if there's a street free agent still out there that Green Bay wants to take a flyer on. I'd feel better about adding that to the depth chart than adding another rookie wide receiver. And so, again, if there's a guy out there, and Green Bay's bringing some guys in, and they're bringing some guys in that have a certain body type. You're looking at that. I mentioned Lance, a bigger wide receiver, a very traditional Z or X outside receiver who not necessarily has the route tree down, but can take the top off the ball and take the top off the coverage. And so, if they get a guy like that who looks the part and has a feel for the game and has the athleticism, I say absolutely go for it. Is it a need? I don't think so.
What would you rather see than a wide receiver or running back if you had to pick between the two?
Running back. 100% running back. Look, Matt LaFleur's offense, and again, when you look at where this team has kind of migrated to, and I don't think there's any question, Josh Jacobs is such a key part of this offense. And I think finding the lightning or thunder or whatever you want to call it, that counterpart to Josh Jacobs, I think is critically important. And so I would much rather, and I am seeing this, I think Green Bay drafts a running back relatively high. And there's some guys out there that are just really super intriguing. I love Mike Washington from Arkansas. He's fun. He is fun to watch. And so, there's some guys like that are out there. Kid from Indiana, Kalen Black, is another kid that Green Bay has actually brought in for a 30 visit that I wouldn't mind at all. And so, again, you're looking for that counterpart. You're looking for that counterpunch, if you will, to what you have in Josh Jacobs. And so, yeah, I think actually running back is a high need on this football team.
So going back to the Dontavian Wicks trade here really quick, were you surprised by that Friday news dump that the Packers moved on from him? And I know a lot of people are saying, is he one of those disgruntled guys and such, which I think there's evidence to point to that, because the fact that he already has a new contract, a 1-year, $12 million deal, tells me that the agent had permission to go out there and seek a deal and such. So, I mean, a lot of signs point to, was he one of those guys that Matt LaFleur kind of referenced about being unhappy with his role on the team?
Well, first of all, I'm not surprised. I'm very pleased. I thought that was a heck of a trade. To get a fifth and a sixth for a guy that you drafted in the fifth round, who you weren't going to sign next year, and it's almost like the Rashawn Gary situation all over again. You get a fourth for Rashawn Gary when everybody in the NFL, everybody in the league, everybody everywhere who's a football fan knew Rashawn Gary was not going to be on the Green Bay Packers at that salary, especially. And so Dontavian Wicks, he was not going to be a part of the future, period, and a discussion. So to get a fifth and a sixth out of that, I thought it was great. So surprised, no. Happy, pleased, absolutely. Was he one of the disgruntled guys? Maybe. But, look, outside of the Detroit game last year, when did Dontavian Wicks show that consistency week in, week out? And you go back to not last season, but the season before, it is 17% drop rate. Led the NFL. Now, don't get me wrong. I know Devontae Adams, his second year, he had a big time problem with the drops, and obviously he built himself into a Hall of Famer. But no, I was ecstatic with that trade, and what Green Bay is doing and setting themselves up for this year. And I've heard this now with some of the national reporters. They like their football team. This is an off season of kind of trimming the edges and kind of, if it's a painting, kind of finishing up the last touches. This is not a football team, at least 1265, thanks to people there, but this is not a football team that is very far away from that ultimate goal. And so you look at what they're doing this offseason, and they're getting guys to fill out kind of the fringe of the roster, so to speak. And again, yes, they need a cornerback, and yes, they need offensive line depth, and we already mentioned the running back, but I think Green Bay likes what they have. And then you look at what they're doing next year, and the projections of compensatory picks as far as what Green Bay is going to be able to do next year. And even without a number one next year, they're going to have a lot of draft choices. So I think Green Bay is using this year to fine-tune, next year to build more depth, And then again, keep this window of opportunity open, because I think Green Bay, again, I think we would all agree, Green Bay has a window now of a chance to be one of those teams that could compete for a Super Bowl. And I think what Goody is doing this offseason, I really like the approach. And again, I think they're in a good spot. So I think the Dontavian Wicks trade, the other things he's doing, I think it all plays into a greater offseason plan and strategy that will put this team on the map come fall.
Joe, so looking ahead to the draft next week, obviously we'll get your mocks and all that sort of stuff, but can you kind of give us a little bit of a glimpse of what potentially it could look like next week?
Yeah, I love Chris Johnson, the cornerback out of San Diego State. I love everything he brings to the table. And if he's there at 52, absolutely. I don't think he's going to be there. And so I see a lot of mocks out there that have him going to the Packers. I don't see it. I think, John, unless you trade up, and I don't see Goody doing that. And so, the guy I like right now in round 2 is Malik Muhammad from Texas. He's a cornerback. He's a little bit lean, but he's also, I believe at the Combine, weighed in that 195 range. He played last year at Texas in the 185 range, 189, right around there. And so to get him 195, I really like what he brings to the table. Another guy that I don't know if Green Bay can go out and get, I love the edge rusher, Dennis Sutton from PSU. I love, especially in the 3-4. I think he fits really well. And now again, could he be a pick 84? Potentially. I mentioned Mike Washington Jr., running back, who I really like. A guy I like who I think is round 4, type of a pick is Darrell Jackson Jr. I look, Lee Hunter, in my opinion, if they go defensive tackle in that second round, the Lee Hunter, the defensive tackle, nose tackle from Texas Tech, I wouldn't mind that at all. And so, but those are just some of the players that I'm looking at and seeing, is this a fit? I think Green Bay drafts a quarterback this year. Another defensive lineman who I like is Christian Miller from Georgia. And we all know Goody likes Georgia Bulldogs. And so, Jordan Vandenberg, another defensive tackle from Georgia Tech. So, there's some guys out there I really, really like. And again, I think Green Bay could go any number of ways. You mentioned offensive line, pick 52, absolutely. Cornerback, pick 52, absolutely. Running back, linebacker, defensive lineman. I think there's a lot of direction, even linebacker for that 3-4 defense. So I think there's a lot of direction. I think this draft is actually pretty deep, that mid-round 2 to end of round 4. So I think Green Bay, could I see Green Bay trading back even? Absolutely. So, yeah, I think though there's some players, the board, at least my board, is starting to shake out a little bit, and I'm kind of putting the pieces where I think they're going to be. And I think Green Bay is going to end up with some good players between, and again, who knows. But I think the real meat of the draft, like I said, is kind of the middle of round 2 to that end of round 4, and I think there's some good players available.
He's Joe DeGuano joining us this morning, chatting some green and gold. We appreciate the time as always, sir. Enjoy the rest of the week, and looking forward to draft week next week, sir.
All right, Dan. Take care, buddy.
You got it. There you go. There's Joe joining us here this morning. We got to take a quick break, and we'll be back. We've got our Mike's Star Markets, Am I Wrongs, your Hy-Vee Game Changers, all that fun stuff, and keep the participation points coming. If you want to win that autographed Dennis Eckersley card, donated by our good listener, good friend, Paul, in the Section 105 chat room on our video stream on YouTube. All right, quick break. We'll be back after these few words. Spring is here, and it is the perfect time for a fresh start in a new ride. Whether you're planning road trips or tackling some weekend projects, or you're just ready for something new, now is the time to upgrade. And at Toyson Ford, you will find a great selection of trucks, SUVs, and cars built to fit your lifestyle and your budget. Plus, their team is here to make your car buying experience easy and stress-free. Hey, this spring, drive something that you love. Toyson Ford, your next adventure starts here. All right, so got to play a little catch-up. As you probably already know, you know how the breaks work. So we got to do one more before the top of the hour. So you get a little bit more time. little bit more time to hit me up with your Hy-Vee game changers and your Mike Star Markets. Am I wrong? All right, so send those on over. I know we were talking a lot about the Brewers, but man, one of the biggest surprises so far, I think it's the Twins. Shout out to Twins fans. You got to be pretty happy right now. Another win last night, taking down the Red Sox. Your first in your division. You're 11-7 to begin the year. So shout out to the Twins, man. Everybody, even Twins fans, I think, wasn't expecting a whole lot this year, but they're off to a good start. You got to tip your cap to them. So, NBA-wise, playoffs did start last night. So we had a couple games. Playoffs, play-in. We're calling it the play-in. So the Hornets getting the win in overtime against the Heat in the 9th versus 10th place game. So also last night, we saw Portland getting the win over Phoenix. So tonight, we've got Orlando and Philadelphia, and then Golden State taking on the Clippers. I do want to talk a little hockey coming up a little bit later on here, too, because Ovechkin, did we potentially see him skate off the ice for maybe the final time? And for all you hockey fans out there, where do you kind of rate Ovechkin in terms of, okay, GOAT status, all-time greats? Is he a top 5? Is he a top 10? Where do you rate Ovechkin? I'll tell you, he's one of my favorite players just because of when they won the Stanley Cup a few years ago, how he celebrated, I can't play the clip, but how he celebrated at the parade and that, I mean, the pure joy, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? So he's one of my favorite players, just from a personality standpoint, I guess. But I want to ask you because, again, I'm not the world's biggest hockey fan, so I'd be curious to know from hockey fans who follow the game in a little bit more detail, where do you see Ovechkin in terms of the all-time list? So give me your thoughts, okay? I'd love to hear. I'd love to know. All right, let's take that quick break here as we start to wrap up the second hour. We'll be right back after these quick words. Super Mario fans, mark your calendars for this Sunday because our good friends at Hy-Vee in Eau Claire, they're going to have a Super Galaxy breakfast going on Sunday, April 19th from 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Kids 4 and under eat free. Otherwise, $6.99 from ages 5 to 12, $12.99 for adults. Enjoy themed food, activities, and an 8-bit meet and greet. Ooh, yeah. So if you're looking for somewhere to hit up some breakfast with a little fun theme to it, hit up our good friends at Hy-Vee in Eau Claire coming up this Sunday, April 19th, again, 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Coming up at 9:35, we're going to be chatting with the founders of eBay because the release of the book yesterday, the Book of eBay. We all had the catalog when we were kids, right? Or at least my age. Maybe a lot of younger ones of listeners probably didn't, but this was something, if you were my age, you looked forward to getting in the mail and such. So the owners, or I should say the founders, Art and Rick, are going to be joining the program. And if you're watching on the stream, you're going to see them, all right, because they're going to zoom in. So you're going to be able to see them on the video stream if you want to tune in at that time to watch them. Otherwise, you'll be able to hear it on the radio dials too. So, but yeah, they're going to be joining us and going to chat a little bit about how they founded eBay. And yeah, so it's part of our Inside the Hobby, since Wednesday's our Inside the Hobby segment. Part of it was I was kind of looking to see how many of you collect shoes. I know some people. So I reached out to them. I reached out to a couple of people that I knew collected Jordans. First one, D9, he has 32 pairs of Jordans. I'm like, dang, okay. The other person, we'll call him Hatch, who's going to be our Bears, kind of Team Bears rep when we get to football season. That dude's got 65 pairs. So 65 pairs of Jordans. Like, okay. All right. I don't know if anybody could top that. So, but yeah, that's, I'm curious, does anybody have any kind of pairs of shoes that they're still holding on, whether it's a Jordan pair or anything like that? So, also, if you are a card collector, today's probably a big day for you because it's the release of the Topps Chrome 2025 NFL series, I see. So, don't know if anybody was pre-ordering or looking forward to that drop today, but it should be a busy day. So, now this is funny because Tim in the Cooley region and John, you both have the same Am I Wrongs coming in at the same time. Same person? I don't know. Tim in the Cooley region, am I wrong for thinking that Joey Ortiz is continuing his slump at the plate from last year? Maybe the Brewers need to make a change. Great defense player, not offensive, still struggling with runners in scoring position. John says, am I wrong to think that Joey Ortiz was going to have a better year this year after the last year, especially after he had a great performance in the World Baseball Classic? So, yeah, Joey Ortiz, man, had a shot again last night with bases loaded. Honestly, I feel like if Cooper Pratt was killing it, we'd be seeing him right now at AAA or at the major league level. But maybe that pressure is going to be there now for him to make his debut to come up sooner rather than later. But, all right, keep those Am I Wrongs coming. Okay, keep them coming. Shot clock's going to cut me off here in less than a minute. We'll get to some game changers here. We'll get back to some more baseball talk, getting set for Game 2 of this Brewers series with the Blue Jays. Answer the question, too, that we talked about in the first hour if you're just joining in. Taboo or not taboo? That is the question. Do you agree with Pat Murphy in his comments about don't boo? Very similar to the Barry Alvarez during football season. Or are you of like, thou shall boo if you play bad? Or maybe you're like, I only boo opponents. Where do you stand on the whole thing? All right. Let me know. I want to hear from you. Okay, we'll take a quick break. We're at halftime. We'll kick off the third quarter coming up after these news updates.